Hello, and welcome back to Lessons in Attachment. Today, I am going to talk to you about 5 common mistakes that are made when communicating with avoidant attachment. So, these are patterns often made by anxious attachers. However, it doesn't have to be. So, we are going to look today. I'll do a brief overview of the anxious avoidant trap, and then I'll simply go through 5 mistakes that, if possible, you want to limit or stop if that's possible, if you're doing them. I am mainly speaking to those of you that relate to having an anxious attachment. You might be someone who has an avoidant attachment, or you are in relationship with someone with an avoidant attachment. Either way, you're looking to understand a bit more about how you can effectively communicate with people that have an avoidant attachment. A little side note, anxious attachers, this is not about ignoring your needs. This is not about putting anyone above you. This is about understanding, it's about compassion, and it's about improving relationships that are important to you, because it might be a surprise to hear that just because someone leans more towards avoidant tendencies, that doesn't mean that they are unavailable. It doesn't mean that they don't care. So it can be really, really useful to understand these kind of pitfalls that we can fall into when communicating with the person that we like, who either has quite a strong avoidant attachment, leans towards it in conflict, whatever it may be, however it shows up for them. You will notice over on my Instagram, carly.ann underscore, that I am talking quite a lot about how to communicate with people with an avoidant attachment, particularly from that anxious point of view. Mainly because I'll tell you a bit more about this towards the end, but mainly because one of the workshops that are upcoming inside the Attachment Recovery Gym, which is my online membership for those of you that are healing anxious attachment and wanting to do that inner work and practice your secure attachment. One of the upcoming webinars that we have is how to communicate with people with avoidant attachment without making things worse. So, yeah, this topic is on my mind a lot at the moment. Let's have a brief overview of the anxious avoidant trap. If you're watching this on YouTube, then you can follow the slides with me, perhaps make any note. Obviously, you can make notes if you're listening or however you're watching, listening. But yeah, on YouTube you can see the slides and the main points here. So, recapping anxious avoidant trap, a common pattern for us anxious attachers, right? So, this is where anxious and avoidant partners, so one person leans more towards anxious and one person leans more towards avoidant in this dynamic. And you become stuck in this kind of cycle where basically you enhance and reinforce each other's main insecurities and fears about love and relationships. So, the anxious attachers, you crave closeness, you crave reassurance, you're often seeking validation and connection with someone outside of you, particularly with someone that you like, which is often someone that is avoidant. And the key thing here is that you really want that closeness, almost like you want you to be merged together, to know what each other are up to all the time, to be thinking of each other all the time, to be in contact as much as possible. That's what makes you thrive in this relationship. Avoidant attachers value independence and actually can feel really overwhelmed by that need for deep connect, not for deep connection, for constant connection. And it leads them to pull away, it leads them to withdraw, and actually maybe it would be deep connection as well. So really you can hear that you kind of want opposite things, you value opposite things, and you trigger each other. The distancing on the avoidant part, it triggers the anxious attacher's fear of rejection. And actually, that makes you pursue the person harder for several different reasons that can happen. And in turn, it causes the avoidant partner to retreat further. So one of you is moving towards and the other one is moving away. And the more that you find yourself in that cycle, kind of the more intense it becomes for the individual's reactions. So it creates a dynamic where both of you are feeling misunderstood, both of you are feeling disconnected in your own ways, even though somewhere there is this deep desire for love and connection. It's more obvious from the anxious attacher, but a lot of people with avoidant attachment, they do want love, they do want connection. However, it when they experience it, their automatic reaction is actually to pull away, that it's unsafe. So, one way to, I can see on the slides, those of you on YouTube will be able to see some typos. But one way to make the relationship work is effective, healthy communication. Hence, today I'm sharing common mistakes made when communicating with avoidant attachers. And this might be someone that you're in a relationship with, it might be someone that you're dating. I wouldn't necessarily be promoting this in the sense of you chasing someone who is very clearly, unavailable. Someone who is unavailable as well. Someone where you're more anxious, you're more sad. This is actually tearing you down rather than building you up. There really needs to be uh, some effort on both parts here. So I do want to say that. But with that in mind and trusting that you know what you're doing and that you are not seeking all of this information for someone who is not able to show up for you, let's move on and look at the 5 communication mistakes that we can often fall into. The first is expecting this person to be able to mind read. We often expect our partner to just know what we need and what's bothering us. And there can be this real sense of like, why should I have to tell them how to love me? Why should I have to tell them again when I already told them what I need? And in some sense, you might say, well, I'm not asking them to mind read because I've said it once. It's not enough most of the time. Okay. Expecting people to mind read at least disappointment and unnecessary conflicts. You'll know when you're expecting them to mind read because you will be saying, I'm fine. No, nothing is bothering me. No, you do what you want. No, I'm not bothered that you cancelled. But you will be telling them in other ways. And as far as you're concerned, they should pick up on that. They should fight for you. They should be doing the right things. So that is things when you start stonewalling, when you start withdrawing and going silent. You start kind of making these hints in all different ways. It's so much easier if you can just be direct. There is no reason that they have to respond to that. And it's very triggering because that might be the kind of behaviors they have experienced that kind of created this in the first place. Avoidant partners, and probably all partners, to be honest, even you as an anxious attacher, you're not going to like it when someone's expecting you to mind read. People are not mind readers. We need to make things really, really clear of what's on our mind, what we're feeling, what we're thinking. Practicing clear, direct communication reduces misunderstandings. In the upcoming webinar, inside which will be homed inside the attachment recovery gym, I will be giving you top tips on how you can communicate effectively, directly, to avoid these kind of misunderstandings and these patterns. Open dialogue, you being brave, you taking risks in your communication, is going to create safer, more connected space and relationship for the both of you, for you as well. The next mistake is bottling things up and it comes out angry. Usually, when drunk, I've added another element there. So, on the one hand, doesn't have to have alcohol involved. So, holding in your feelings, not acknowledging something, even just for yourself, because we don't have to say things as soon as we notice that we're upset or we're feeling a bit of resentment. We might want to reflect on that a bit. We might want to decide what's really going on there for ourselves or choose the right moment to have these conversations. But if we never have the conversations, if it just stays in and we bottle it up, Usually, what happens is these suppressed emotions, these suppressed experiences, they often resurface as anger. And trust me, when you suddenly feel angry and you feel triggered, you are going to take that opportunity to say everything that has been on your mind. You will suddenly be telling this person about themselves, criticizing them. And don't forget, avoidant attachers really, really don't do well with feeling criticized. Now, these outbursts are most likely to happen if you're drinking alcohol. Communication becomes unclear, reactions feel heightened, you suddenly have this Dutch courage. And here's the thing, though, about drinking alcohol: your toolbox, all this effort that you've put in, all the self soothing that you've learned, and how to manage your anxious attachment, it goes out of the window. You know how much effort you have to put in when you are sober, right? To managing your anxious attachment. It sometimes takes all of your strength. So when it comes to adding alcohol to that mix, it's near impossible a lot of the time. Next is seeking constant reassurance. Anxious attachers often feel uncertain, and trust me when I say you do not like uncertainty. It's like actually being allergic to uncertainty. And so, one way you will manage that in the moment, manage that discomfort of the unknown, of an ambiguous situation, is seek reassurance to ease your anxiety. And you're actually trying to get certainty. So instead of sitting with the discomfort of what you don't know and the possibility of change, the possibility of someone not liking you, the possibility of someone letting you down, that kind of uncertainty, which isn't always the case, by the way. Sometimes people are just busy, or you just haven't heard from them yet, or the list can go on. This is your attempt, though, to get certainty. And this need for outside validation and confirmation can lead to repeatedly asking, is everything okay? Repeatedly checking, finding your own subtle ways to seek that reassurance. Maybe it will be asking your partner constantly if they're happy with you, if you've upset them, do they love you? Maybe it'll be someone you're dating, just checking, we are still seeing each other on Saturday, just checking that plan that we had in place, who else is going to be there, checking their social media. Has anything changed? Have they changed their profile picture? That's constant reassurance seeking. And it makes avoidant partners feel really pressured and overwhelmed, even if you're doing things where they can't necessarily see you. So, for example, checking their online, checking social media, there is an energy. There's an energy that we just feel when someone is in our space in that way that can really make us feel overwhelmed, pressured, a little bit icky, all of the things. And the urge to check, the urge to be sure of things is so strong because you struggle to trust. You need to know 100% what is happening, 100% if you're loved. And it's doing more damage. So to be able to sit with that urge to check and to seek reassurance is really important. Testing their commitment and threatening to end things. Testing someone's commitment by threatening to end things very rarely goes well. People do not like this kind of behavior, and I'm sure you don't either. You may or may not know that you're testing them because the chances are that in the moment, sometimes it feels really, really strong. You really mean it when you say you can't take this anymore. You really mean it when you say they've crossed a boundary and you're ending it. However, once you've calmed down, you can often, see things clearer. And actually, that's not what you wanted. And you might not mean it. You might mean it in the moment. That's going to really become clear as things unfold. But often, we're talking here about when you are actually just testing their reaction. If you know that you're doing this, that's a whole different ball game to when it's unconscious. And listen, when it backfires, you're testing them, it can lead to regret or losing the connection entirely. I've literally spoken to people that have tested people by saying, "No, you know what? I don't want to see you anymore. when really what they're doing is testing to see if this person is going to fight for them. And it has backfired. Sometimes people it will backfire because people know you're playing a game, and that is just a big old turn off. Sometimes it backfires because it's like, yeah, you know what, actually, let's not do this anymore. And actually, that's probably quite a good thing in the long run because you actually save yourself time. But, there's healthier ways to get to that resolution. Saying, I don't want to see you anymore can result in them agreeing, and that will feel like rejection. It's not the healthy way to go about this. It's not their responsibility to fight for you if you're not being honest about your needs. Okay, so the last mistake that I'm going to share has some grey areas. Now, this is demanding immediate answers. So you might be doing this through text, you might be doing this in person, but you're putting some kind of pressure on them to speak right now. Maybe you're saying to them, why aren't you saying anything? Aren't you bothered? Don't you care? What do you have to say about this? It might be that they are not responding by text and you are just going, repeatedly trying to contact them, telling them this isn't fair, I need to know, I'm desperate. And it may be true, you may really feel desperate in these moments. However, the actual reality is that the more that this happens, the longer you will have to wait, or what you do end up getting back from them may not be as accurate, it might not be as careful, as caring as you really do need. Okay, but this need of urgency is taking over in this moment. So there's this demand for immediate answers from the avoidant. It often arises from the anxious attacher's need for reassurance and need for connection that I've already mentioned. But this urgency, simply put, can overwhelm avoidant partners and pushes them further away. It pushes them further away in that moment. It can push them further away overall. And the reality is that this can be quite re-traumatizing. It might be exactly why they've shut down in the first place, because maybe there's been someone in their past who did demand answers for them, did create a space where they didn't feel safe. And ultimately, for the people that we love, for the people that we like, we need to be creating a safe space for one another. And, I know that you need that safe space as well. And this is the gray area. So I hear you saying, but what about me? What about my safety? Because I need these responses in order to feel safe. Well, firstly, this is a video about mistakes made when communicating with avoidance. So today we are saying what it is that they need in these moments. The bottom line here is that space, slowness, time to ground ourselves, time to calm down is also what the anxious attacher does need as well. Of course, we want to be mindful of how much space we're giving. I'm not talking about days and weeks on ends of you being ignored. And I'm not actually talking about you being ignored. It can be planned space. But this insistence, and just to say that I will touch on that more in the webinar of how to communicate with avoidant attachers without making things worse. But this insistence on quick responses can trigger them to withdraw, leading to more miscommunication, leading to bigger arguments. And it just creates this negative dynamic. It's a feedback loop where you have increased anxiety and they then have increased avoidance. So, if you can somehow find it in you to let things play out without the need for immediate reactions, without the need for immediate response, actually, that's going to be really great for your anxiety anyway, for you to be able to sit with and manage the discomfort in between. And so, that's the kind of unplanned double bonus, if you like, with this. So they are the 5 the 5 mistakes. So, expecting someone to mind read, bottling things up, which comes out as angry and usually when drunk, seeking constant reassurance, testing their commitment and threatening to end things, and demanding immediate answers. What we're going to take just a moment to do now is just a bit of self reflection. So, what communication habits do you notice in yourself that might be creating misunderstandings or distance in your relationships? And how can you start shifting towards clearer, more direct communication? Now, this is not about self blame, it's not about self criticism. This is self reflection. Okay, that is what this is about. That's what we want to focus on here. So be compassionate towards yourself, be kind towards yourself, but just reflect, casually and kindly on, is there any misunderstandings, anything that you're doing that you would benefit from not doing? And how can you start shifting towards clearer, more direct communication? And remember, it's small steps. When we start, I'm going into the webinar, but when we start to make these changes, it can be messy at the beginning. We can kind of go back and forth with our old communication styles. And, when we're triggered in the moment, we can see that we are falling into these traps that I've spoken about today. That's normal. Okay. If you stay on this path, it's the compound effect. Small changes, lots of small changes will lead to real big transformation. Now, I hope you found this useful, but before we end, I do just want to let you know, because I've touched on it already, a bit more about what's coming up inside the Attachment Recovery Gym. So, this is our online space for those of you that relate to having anxious attachment. You get anxious in your relationships. Perhaps that shows up as anger, loneliness, jealousy, lots of different ways. But what we've got coming up is how to talk to an avoidant without making things worse, our anxious attachment support group, which we have each month. Plus, I am in talks with a wonderful self worth expert who hopefully will be coming in soon as well. Sort of end of November, early December, we're talking about at the moment. That's not to mention everything that's already inside, including lots of workshops, guest experts, somatic practices, resources, and tools to help you exercise your secure attachment so that you can move from anxious attachment towards secure. Hope you found this useful, and I will be back here again very soon.